Michelle. You know, I was. I'm not sure. Like, then I got started. If you didn't. I need it. I can't really do this. Oh. And then something like Margaret on the base, where they were part of Randy. That maybe that. No. Totally.
Welcome, everyone, to Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Suzanne McQuaid, happy to be with you this morning, and we're very lucky to have our friend and reliable minister, Reverend Arvid Straube, with us today, who has a very, very impressive bio that you see at the end of your order of service. And to start things off, we're now going to read together the centering thought, rather than having it just linger up there with print with maybe nobody acknowledging it. So together, hatred cannot put an end to hatred. Only love can. And we thank you for this order of service to Newland and to Jamie and Joanne and Arvid, who put the whole thing together. Okay. So to help us enter the spirit of worship, to calm our hearts and minds, we'll listen to the prelude played by our wonderful pianist today, Barbara.
This was written in the late 1870s, the Cultural Revolution that just ended, and this was when he wrote this as what he describes as a part of his thesis, as a guidance. So he's all these
Thank you, Barbara. Summit is a liberal religious community bound by shared principles that are drawn from world religions, humanist teachings, nature science, philosophy, and personal practices. We are a religion of love and inclusion. Our mission here at Summit is to build a more compassionate, just, and sustainable world. And we thank the old friends who we see, some have come back today, and also the new friends. And Jim Weed's going to make an announcement, so he'll come up while I do the land acknowledgement. For millennia, the Kumeyaay have been part of this land. This land has nourished, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a balance of harmony. We acknowledge this legacy, we promote this balance and harmony, and we find inspiration from this land of the Kumeyaay.
Good morning. Glad to see everyone here today and everyone that's joining us on Zoom. Thank you for the music again today as well. The Welcoming and Membership Committee invites you to join us at Summit for two events. The first event is a conversation about the proposed changes to the UU principles and purposes. This will happen today at 12 noon in the Summit Library. Have you heard about the Article 2 report and changes proposed to the UU principles? They will be voted on at the General Assembly in June. Your views are important to helping Summit's delegates understand and share the views of our congregation on these proposed changes. Article 2 of the UU bylaws and principles and purposes is the foundation of our shared values and the covenant to which all UU congregations and communities agree to as members of the UUA. The last substantial changes to these principles were made in 1985. For those who can't be here in purpose, there will be a Zoom capability, and the link for that is found in this week's e-news. The second event is Getting to Know Us. This is an orientation for newcomers and visitors to Summit. And so you'll be able to join us for a relaxed conversation about Unitarian Universalism, Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and their histories with the welcoming and membership committees. This will be occurring on Sunday, May 7th at 12 noon as well in the Summit Library. Eleanor Weed, president of Summit, Mary Carter Vale, director of RE, as well as members from the Welcoming and Membership Committee will be in attendance. And then to try to entice or bribe you, depending upon how you view it, coffee and croissant sandwiches will be served. RSVP information can be found in the weekly e-news or the scene, and there will be, I believe, a link for this as well appearing later in the e-news. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you for everyone responsible for the service. Yes, Sandy.
Just a quick update on the annual pledge campaign. We've reached over 70% of our goal, but the last 30% is going to be the toughest. So those of you who have not yet sent in your forms, we look forward to getting those. Our intrepid visiting stewards will be contacting those of you who are lingering. Thank you.
Yeah, no malingering, only lingering allowed. Okay. Thank you for being with us today for a time of reflection and connection. We invite you to stay after the service for gathering, share joys and concerns, and give feedback to Reverend Arvid. And after that, coffee and refreshments in the salon. And Renee and Joe have pitched in a lot when they've been service leaders. And this service was Jamie and Joanne's going to come up and light the chalice. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom. We strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. You, him, and aspiration. Thank you, Joanne. Would everyone please stand? For all will be low. Stop. Let beauty truth. And Reverend Arvid is going to do the aspiration.
May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. Good morning, you may be seated. It's great to be back. And I've been practicing Buddhist meditation since 1975. And this is the core of my own spirituality, although as a good UU, I have taken inspiration from other of the world's religions and wisdom traditions. Today, we'll start with one of the oldest Buddhist scriptures, the Dhammapada. And as I do short reflections throughout the service on some of the Buddha's teachings, I'll start with another quote from one of the early Buddhist scriptures. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If we speak or act with an evil thought, pain follows us as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. If we speak or act with pure thought, happiness follows us like a shadow that never leaves us. What often happens is we invite children to come forward, but we don't have that many, and I don't want to put any of them on the spot when they haven't agreed to it. So I'm going to tell a really ancient story that's been told many times, all the way back to the time of the Buddha, who told a version of this called Blind Man and the Elephant. But this is a poem by the Sufi teacher Rumi. You've heard of Rumi, many of you. And I'd like you to imagine that you've never seen an elephant before, that you have no idea what an elephant is like. And so this is the poem which tells the story. Some Hindus have an elephant to show. No one here has ever seen an elephant. They bring it at night to a dark room. One by one, we go in the dark and come out saying how we experience the elephant. One of us happens to touch the trunk, a water pipe kind of creature. Another, the ear, a very strong, always moving back and forth fan animal. Another, the leg. I find it still like the column of a temple. Another touches the curved back, a leathery throne. Another, the cleverest, feels the trunk, a rounded sword made of porcelain. He's proud of his description. Each of us touches one place and understands the whole in that way. The palm and the fingers feeling in the dark are how the senses explore the reality of the elephant. If each of us held a candle, and if we went in together, we could see it. This is an important part of the Buddha's teachings, that we tend to grab onto partial opinions and views of the world based on only some, taking in some of what reality is. And lighting a candle is to be mindful and observant. This week was Earth Day, really important holiday for Unitarian Universalists and hopefully the global community. So in order to celebrate Earth Day, let's sing together one of our favorite hymns, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. And you may rise as you're able. For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, silence. Seated for our meditation, which will be both music and guided spoken word. This is one of the oldest meditations that the Buddha taught. It's called metta meditation or loving kindness meditation. And there's a fun legend that goes with how this meditation was invented. So the Buddha sent some of his monks to a wilderness, to a jungle, to meditate, to establish a habitation and a place to practice. And the forest sprites that lived there didn't like the invasion of these humans, and so they did everything possible to scare them away. They made horrible screams. They threw coconuts at their head. They emitted foul odors. And the monks ran back to the Buddha and said, "We're afraid of these creatures. Please let us leave." And as an antidote to fear, the Buddha taught this loving kindness meditation. So we're lucky here that one of our Unitarian Universalist musicians, Ian Riddell, has written song version of this. So if you'll stay seated, but turn to 231 in the purple hymn. So I'm suggesting that what you do is while you're singing these three verses, so first one, may I be filled with loving kindness, which is how that meditation is taught, sending it to ourselves first. And then with you, sending it to other people, people we love, and just ordinary random people we know, and even people we're having trouble with. And then finally, the third time, we, which is all beings in the way it's traditionally taught. And so what I'd like you to do as as you sing, pay attention to the sensations at your heart center, right in the center of your chest. And see what happens. See if there might not be some warmth that builds there. If not, that's fine. Just be aware of your heart as you sing these. So Barbara, would you go ahead? Keeping that awareness at the center of your chest. Imagine everyone in this room and send those thoughts of loving kindness and health and wholeness to everyone here. Let that love spread from your heart center to everyone here. And let it spread to everyone in Santee, in the region. Let it spread actually to the whole globe. And not just to humans, but to all beings who feel pain and all wish the same thing, to be happy, to be well, to be at peace. Let that love spread. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe and protected from all harm. May all beings be well. May all beings be at peace. from the ancient scripture. Mind should be inclined thus. Others will adhere to their own views, hold on to them tenaciously, and relinquish them with difficulty. We shall not adhere to our own views or hold them tenaciously, but shall relinquish them easily. You know, I don't have any tattoos. I don't think I'll ever get any tattoos. But if I were to get one, I know what it would say. It would say, don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. You know, the Buddha summarized his teachings and practices toward liberation in what he called an ennobling eightfold path. And those were 8 practices that he recommended to end suffering. Right thought was one of those practices. In my work as a spiritual director, so often I've worked with people who are struggling in their lives, and sometimes external circumstances are what causes that struggle. But often the struggle is caused by old stories that people have told themselves over and over again. Those stories are real. They're real in the sense they cause anguish and fear and self-loathing sometimes. They're real, but they're seldom true. They're seldom true. But people act on those stories because it's part of who they think they are. At some point in their lives, those stories did make sense, probably when they were very young. But those to bring awareness and compassion is the way we heal from these stories, because resisting them is just as hard and bad as believing. So it matters what we think. It matters a lot, and we're not really aware of what we think very often, because thoughts lead to actions, actions lead to habits, habits build character. We can actually cultivate skillful thoughts. We can cultivate thoughts of generosity, of compassion, of awareness, of wisdom. And when they come, we can notice and do them more often. And when afflictive thoughts arise, we can take care of them, bring awareness and compassion to them. But we don't have to make them our life story. So one of the things we need to be willing to let go of are our opinions. Yeah, I'm taking that to use. I am, I mean it. We need to be able to let go of our opinions. Because the Buddha said that he talked about 3 poisons that cause suffering. One is greed, the other is aversion, and the third is ignorance, meaning I'm not seeing what's real. And one of the worst forms of greed is greed for opinions. You know, the world is a scary and uncertain place. We really only know a tiny bit, but it somehow makes us safer to feel like we know more than that. And so we create opinions, and those opinions can harden into identities. The third Zen patriarch is quoted as saying, "Do not search for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions." A more modern teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, said, "Do not be idolatrous about or bound to any doctrine, theory, or ideology, even Buddhist ones. Buddhist systems of thought are guiding means. They are not absolute truth." You know, what we think is true is often untested.
We don't really ask ourselves, how do I know? How do I know the strongly held opinion, the one I argue with that uncle on Thanksgiving Day about until we both leave the house? How do we know that's true? You know, it's subject to a lot of distortion. It's subject to habit of thoughts. It's subject to ignorance, greed, and delusion. And it's definitely subject to our cultural conditioning. Think about this. Almost all war, terrorism, and oppression in the world is perpetuated by people who are 100% certain they are right. Think about it. Is there anything you're 100% certain of, really? Is the world complex? Is there more nuance than you think? It doesn't mean that we don't act on our convictions. Sometimes we act on 51% conviction. And we need to do that, or the world would not go forward. But it's always important to ask ourselves, is this true? How do I know? From the ancient scripture. And what is right speech? Abstinence from false speech. Abstinence from divisive speech. Abstinence from harsh speech. Abstinence from idle chatter. This is called right speech. It's hard to exaggerate the amount of suffering that we humans cause each other by unskillful speech. In small ways and in globally impactful ways. Our moral atmosphere is being more and more polluted in our personal relationships, and also by misinformation, hate speech, angry and harmful speech, which is spread ever more effectively by evolving technology. We are, I think all of us sometimes, victims of what has been called the outrage industrial complex. These are people who monetize hatred and harsh speech. And I have to say, you're thinking of your favorite villains here, but this happens on both sides of the political divide. So, you know, think about it. The minute we wake up, we expect to be lied to. You know, if you turn on the radio, perhaps you know you have to take with a grain of salt anything that the public spokesman says, a government person says, a politician says, and all those advertisements. Certainly, you need to take those with a grain of salt. so that we hear dozens of lies before breakfast, maybe. This is the atmosphere we're living in, polluted by unskillful speech. Buddha said, in order to be happy and protect the well-being of others, we should practice skillful speech. Now, what's that? Well, of course, it's not lying. That's the first. Honest speech. But here, there's a nuance, and that is that honest speech is not enough. It also has to be helpful speech. It has to be kind speech. The Buddha identified 3 kinds of speech that are particularly unhelpful. The first is gossip. You know, there's the old Hasidic story about a person who came to a rabbi and said, you know, I have all kinds of problems. I spread gossip everywhere I go. And the rabbi said, hey, do you have a feather pillow? And she said, yeah. So he said, give me that feather pillow. And he took a pair of scissors and he threw the feathers everywhere. And then he said, go find every single one of those feathers. And she said, that's impossible. And he said, yeah, that's gossip. Once you spread unhelpful, unkind things about other people that are not there, you don't know how much damage and how far that harm can travel. The point is to pay attention to what we're saying, even in casual conversation. Are the words true? Are they kind? Are they helpful? Because words are very powerful. I struggle with that, as I think almost everyone else does. But that's where it begins. The thoughts, and then the words. The second kind that is most particularly unskillful is dishonest speech. And here the Buddha's talking not just about outright lying, but half-conscious speech like innuendo, half-truth, exaggeration, and perhaps the most damaging of all, self-deception. All right, so you see how hard this is? You know, we're never going to be perfect at that. Part of the human condition is that something about us wants to do unskillful speech. The point is not to be perfect. In Buddhism, ethics are not like the 10 Commandments. They're training suggestions, because we know that we can never do anything perfectly. So right speech needs not only, and maybe this is the most important in our time right now, right speech needs not to be only honest, but it needs to be kind and helpful. We've all known people who use honesty and frankness as a sadistic weapon. Do we really need to share contempt? Do we really need sarcasm that we know is going to hurt the other person? Do we really need to nitpick people's faults or perceived faults? How about criticism? How can we improve without criticism? Talk to my parents. They didn't think so. And finally, skillful speech is both necessary and timely. Necessary and timely. I love these words by the Buddha about how to admonish someone, which we sometimes need to do. Before admonishing someone, one should reflect thus: in due season will I speak, not out of season. In truth will I speak, not in falsehood. Gently will I speak, not harshly, for his benefit will I speak, not for his laws. In kindness will I speak, not in anger. And we're now going to move into another sun meditation. Please turn your deal to 111. We'll stay seated for this. 1011, 1011. From the ancient scripture. And what is, these are 5 gifts of a good person. What 5? He gives a gift out of faith. She gives a gift respectfully. He gives a timely gift. She gives a gift unreservedly. He gives a gift without injuring himself or others. So I want to invite you to do a thought experiment. Think about the stingiest person you know, the most tight-fisted, stingy person you know. Just bring them to mind and notice how you feel when you think about them. Notice in your body what happens when you think about that person. Doesn't feel so good, does it? All right. Now, think about the most generous person you know. Generous with what they have in terms of material good, generous with love, affirmation, affection, compassion, time. Someone who just gives and has joy in giving. Think about them. And notice how you feel. All great religious traditions recognize generosity as an essential practice for spiritual growth and for developing our true humanity. Because it loosens the bonds of ego, of this tight sense of separateness that we hold on to, this protectiveness that causes us so much pain. So every time we give something away, whether it be time, love, affection, or material goods, it loosens the control of this tight ego self. a sense of selflessness. And almost all the great religious traditions of the world teach that this is one of the most direct means of creating happiness for ourselves and others. The Buddha talked about, 3 levels of giving. The first is tentative giving, and then putting that in a modern context, say that the congregation is going to have a rummage sale, and you look at all your old stuff in your garage, and you say, well, I don't need this, but wait, maybe bell bottoms will come back. Well, they have, haven't they? And maybe they'll fit into them. These, I'll give them to the rummage sale. That's what the Buddha called tentative giving. It's fearful. It's worrying that we're going to regret that. And the second kind of giving, the second level of giving is sibling-like giving. This is where we give willingly and we take satisfaction because we know we're meeting the needs of someone else, somebody we care about, or something we care about, or a cause or a congregation we care about. And it makes us happy. And there's no hesitation. Sibling-like giving. And then finally, there's royal giving, which is effortless and spontaneous. It's giving out of the joy of giving. It's giving, not worrying about how much gratitude or thanks you'll get. It's not even needing the recipient to know that you are the giver of that generosity. So if you'd like to practice this, you can try something. You can, and by the way, it's important to say that the Buddha said all 3 of these forms of giving are positive. Even the tentative giving with the bell bottoms, they're all positive. They all loosen the bonds of ego. They all create connection and joy and happiness. But here's the experiment. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, for a week, give in to every generous impulse you have. Whether that be to give someone a compliment or an affectionate word or some kind of encouragement or some kind of material thing or paying for something for someone, or see if you can, what happens if you were to give in for 1 week to every positive, generous impulse you have, not giving away your estate necessarily, but within reason, give in to every one of those positive, generous impulses. And I'm going to give you an opportunity right now. Would you introduce the offering?
Thank you, Reverend. Sandy, probably particularly thank you. And we should say thank you for your generosity. Since Reverend Arvid retired, he has he had a long working life, but also his ministry is now spiritual practices. But he has been very generous with Summit. He's helped the board, he's helped the search committee, and we thank you for that. So we are a fellowship. Now here's the real Pat speech. We are a fellowship supported entirely by voluntary generosity of our members and friends. We appreciate our faithful pledgers, particularly this time of keep their monthly contributions up. If you would like to support Summit today, the answers are coming with donations. And if you're on Zoom, you've got that wonderful button on the website and in chat. So thank you. And thank you, Barbara, for your inspiration and music.
This is Darius Milhaud, French composer.
And I chose this in honor of Earth Day. It's from his suite entitled Printemps, which means spring. And it's really French and very alive. And think about that this was actually written more than 100 years ago. and how new it sounds today.
Both parts were really good, Barbara. Thank you.
For two pieces, that's my mistake.
All right, so we're gonna have a singing meditation. Number 100 and 1009 in the Teal hymnals. And this is a three-part song, and I'm not the musician to lead a three-part song, but I'm not really worried about it because some of you know the other parts and are going to go ahead and sing those other parts. So I'm going to sing the melody, and I'm suggesting that we all sing the melody the first time around, and then I'm asking Barbara to play it twice more, and you can feel free to sing any of the three parts that are there, or just follow me for the melody. From the ancient scripture, the Dhammapada, refrain from all that is detrimental, undertaking all that is skillful, purifying one's mind. This is the teachings of the Buddhas. Now let's join together as we sing our closing circle song.
Wonderful, like definitely, in every angle that you hit. And I really liked what you said about what kind of tattoo you would get. And I have some family members that have tattoos, but most are designs and things, but I think that